Welcome to KMUZ Theater Talk. I'm Ed Shopes.
I'm Ann McBride, and we're here the first and third Fridays of the month to tell you all about what's happening in the Mid-Willamette Valley theater world.
On today's program, I'll talk with Assistant Director Dan Bushong and two actors from Albany Civic Theater's production of The PROM, and that's opening April 5th and playing through April 27th.
And in our second interview segment, Ed and I will talk with Susan Coromel, Director of Dancing at LUGHNASA, running April 11th through 27th at Willamette University. But first, let's get started with our Theater Talk calendar. Take it away, Ed.
All right, Ann. Albany Civic Theater is at albanycivic.org, and April 5th through 27th, Albany Civic will stage The PROM, a musical about four brassy Broadway actors who help a small-town high schooler that wants to bring their girlfriend to the prom. Love and acceptance overcome community fears in this feel-good musical. We'll hear from Assistant Director Dan Bushong and two actors from the show later in today's program.
Children's Educational Theater at cetsalem.org. Online registrations are open for CET's 5-week summer theater experience for students from grades 3 through 12. Go to cetsalem.org to secure a spot for your kiddos.
Elsinore Theater is at elsinoretheater.com, and for information about local events and touring shows on stage at the Elsinore, go to their website and Facebook page.
Enlighten Theatrics at Enlighten Theatrics on Facebook. Since suspending their regular season, Enlighten Theatrics is working to carry on their educational mission. Enlighten recently partnered with the Portland-based Bridgetown Conservatory of Musical Theater, and the duo are looking forward to holding musical theater workshops in Salem.
Gallery Theater is at gallerytheater.org. Romeo and Juliet Choose Your Own Ending closes this weekend, April 7th at Gallery Theater. The audience votes during each performance on which course true love takes in this irreverent madcap reimagining of Shakespeare's beloved romance. Check out our KMUZ Theater Talk podcast for an interview with director John Hamilton and two actors from the show. Next up at Gallery Theater is Anastasia the Musical, and that opens April 26th and plays through May 19th.
Kaiser Homegrown Theater at kaiserhomegrowntheater.org. Silent Sky by Lauren Gunderson comes to the Kaiser Homegrown stage April 12th through 28th. It's based on the true story of Henrietta Leavitt, a 19th century astronomer.
The Majestic Theater is on Facebook and also at majestic.org. Monty Python's Spam-A-Lot, with book and lyrics by Eric Idle and music by John DePrez and Eric Idle, runs May 3rd through 19th at the Majestic. It's directed by Ashley Barbeau.
Mid-Valley Musical Theater at mvmtheater.org, and then also on Facebook at Mid-Valley Musical Theater. Auditions for their summer musical, Mamma Mia, are June 8th. Go to the website for details.
Pentacle Theater is at pentacletheater.org. The fun comedy Ripcord by David Lindsay Abair runs April 19th through May 1st at Pentacle. It's directed by Karen McCarty. And auditions for Clue by Sandy Rustin happen May 18th at Pentacle Theater. Clue is directed by Brandon Gitchell and runs August 23rd through September 14th. For audition info, go to pentacletheater.org or their Facebook page. And the drama Boy Gets Girl by Rebecca Gilman runs June 7th through 29th at Pentacle Theater. That one's directed by Emily Loberg. And don't forget, Joe Dodge's acting workshop for actors 18 and older are still going on at Pentacle Theater's rehearsal studio in downtown Salem. For more info, go to tickets.pentacletheater.org or their Facebook page.
The Salem Playhouse at thesalemplayhouse.com. The Salem Playhouse also offers acting classes for both kids and adults at Kaiser Homegrown Theater and adult classes at Chemeketa Community College. To sign up, go to thesalemplayhouse.com and click on the Classes tab.
Spotlight Community Theater is at spotlightcommunitytheater.org. Coming to Spotlight May 9th through 19th is Much Ado Out West by Wade Bradford, and it's directed by Shannon Rempel.
Theater 33 at Willamette University at theater33.org. Theater 33 has announced their 2024 summer season of new plays. Acting auditions are April 13th from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. The full season, complete with pop-ups, is on their Facebook page and website.
Opening the season on May 23rd through June 2nd is AP by playwright Dano Madden and directed by Elizabeth Hellman. A middle-aged man struggling to become a parent finds himself haunted by the spirit of his dead mother, creating even more distance in his already faltering marriage. Grow, Learn, Play by Sarah Jean Acquardi and directed by Melody Erfani runs June 20th through 30th. It won't stop snowing. It's getting late. Gloria's parents still haven't come to pick her up, and these daycare employees just want to get home. A play about the importance and the limits of sharing and caring. And Gone by Lolly Ward is directed by Rod Sabalos, and that runs July 25th through August 4th at the festival. A will provides peace of mind as four step-siblings divide their anticipated inheritance with generosity, with suspicion, and with greed. Gamble the night away, but whatever you do, don't leave the house. Your family is watching. The 2024 New Play Festival pop-up plays include Group, or Marlene is Dead by Sophia Molimbi. It's not your typical parenthood comedy. Red Line by Barbara Hume, both historic and topical. The play takes place from 1938 to 1948 in St. Louis. Wife of Headless Man Investigates Her Own Disappearance by Yusef L. In this play, a woman thinks she may have been drugged during her interview with a tech giant.
We'll have Theater 33 on an upcoming broadcast to tell us all about the full season.
Western Oregon University is at wou.edu/theater. May 29th through June 1st, John Proctor is the Villain hits the stage at Rice Auditorium at Western Oregon, and that's directed by Raisa Fleming.
Willamette University at wutheater.com. Brian Friel's Irish family masterwork, Dancing at LUGHNASA, directed by Susan Coromel, comes to Willamette's Pelton Theater stage April 11th through 27th. Susan joins us later in today's program to talk with us about it.
At the high schools, Central High School in Independence is at chsperformingarts.net. And Central High School Spring Musical is Legally Blonde, and it runs May 11th through 18th. Check out their website, chsperformingarts.net, or their Performing Arts Booster Club Facebook page for showtimes and tickets.
McKay High School is on Facebook at McKay Thespians. Their spring musical at McKay is Little Shop of Horrors, running May 10th through 18th.
McNary High School is on Facebook at Ken Collins Theater, and Shakespeare's Classic Twelfth Night runs May 15th through 18th at McNary High.
North Salem High School on Facebook at NSHS Theater. Tuck Everlasting will be on stage at North April 11th through 20th. That's followed by Sense and Sensibility, playing May 23rd through 25th.
South Salem High School is on Facebook at Saxon Drama. 12 Angry Jurors is on stage at South Salem High, May 10th through 18th, and South Salem High's Spring Improv Night will be on May 23rd.
Sprague High School. Next up at Sprague is One Act, April 11th through 20th.
West Salem High School is at westsalemdrama.com. Radium Girls come to the West Salem High stage May 23rd through 25th.
That wraps up our KMUZ Theater Talk calendar for plays around the Mid-Willamette Valley.
Coming up next, we'll hear from Assistant Director Dan Bushong and two actors from Albany Civic Theater's upcoming production of The PROM. Stay with us. We'll have more theater talk for you in just a moment. Our next guest on KMUZ Theater Talk, Dan Bushong, who is the assistant director and stage manager of the PROM, a wonderful musical that opens at Albany Civic Theater on April 5th. And Dan has brought along Abigail Hobson and Liz Winters, two of the actors from the PROM. Welcome to Theater Talk, you guys.
Thank you for having us on.
Thanks so much for having us.
Listen, Dan, being an assistant director is a really important job, and you're also stage managing as well. You are a busy guy. The directors, Christy Steers and Miranda Keeling, couldn't join us today, but give me a little insight about why Steers and Keeling decided to do this show at Albany.
Christy Sears and Miranda Keeling went to see a touring kind of more Broadway-esque version of it up in Seattle, and they were just enamored with the show. They were talking about it leading up like for at least a year. They were really excited about putting the show on, and they were just forming a really strong team to try to bring the best out of the show that we could. And I decided to jump on board and, be a part of such a great, wonderful show, honestly.
It is a terrific show. It's a little bit of a different plot for Broadway musicals. Give us a little summary of the show, Dan.
Sure. The show features a group of Broadway stars who are kind of looking for, that recognition and that admiration that they may have lost in recent times. So they're trying to look for a trendy subject to get on board with, and they find one in this young high school student who is kind of alienated from being able to attend a high school prom. So they go to try to make a different cause and bring light to this girl who wants to join the prom, but is kind of being outcast by her society. So they kind of decide that it's just a good fit for them to be involved in. They try to get this Emma Nolan into kind of recognition, throughout the society she's been thrust into.
Abby, you're playing the lead role, Emma Nolan, the high school girl who wants to bring her girlfriend to the prom, but is facing a lot of challenges, including the Broadway stars. Your character isn't quite sure that she wants so much help.
Yeah, Emma Nolan is somewhat more of the shy type of character. She's not shy about who she is, but she's shy of certain circumstances. So when these big energy Broadway stars come crashing in the school hallways, she is more terrified than anything, but it all works out for her well in the end.
Yeah, it's a little bit complicated because Emma's girlfriend is a cheerleader in the high school, and her mom is an active parent who basically says, we're just going to have a prom somewhere else, which is not cool, but it's a way that she wants to keep the dance on the straight and narrow. Basically, this mom is afraid of what her daughter wants to tell her. Isn't that right?
Yeah, very much so. And I actually know a lot of friends who are part of the LGBTQ plus community, and their parents also don't see them eye to eye on that kind of subject. So it's really interesting being able to play so close to a character that resembles a lot of people that I know, and it makes it a little easier to act around it.
Well, while that mirror is hard to see through sometimes, this show is eminently entertaining. Liz, you're playing Dee Dee, who is one of the Broadway stars. Tell us a little bit about your character.
Dee Dee is quite the character. She describes herself at one point as the gay positive icon, and she really starts at the show attempting to be this celebrity activist, like Dan said, to improve her reputation and make her more likable. And she really goes on this journey to understand that being an icon or a celebrity or positive press and PR, that doesn't actually make you a good person. And she really gets to learn what that looks like through her relationships with others in the show, like with Emma, the other Broadway cast, and some people that she meets in this small town.
Right. And she is kind of complicated by a little love interest herself, isn't she?
She sure is. Yes.
Yeah. The principal. And I've seen this show, and what really interests me is this trope has been put on stage and in film many, many times, and usually the high school principal is the bad guy, but that's not the case in this show, is it?
No, not at all. He really, advocates for his students and, really takes that role and really takes on the PTA.
Yeah, I think that makes this show really eminently interesting. Dan, tell us how the staging is going to be for your show, because the scenes move quickly from one location to another. How are you handling that on the Albany stage?
The primary set kind of appearance that we're kind of going with is kind of like this bleacher stand sense. A lot of the show takes place like within a gym type setting. There are a number of scene changes throughout where it's in a different setting, where we're kind of doing like scene changes like very proficiently, kind of in between musical numbers. That way the focus can still be focused directly onto the singer and the actors on stage, so that way none of the focus is taken away, while we kind of like add on like little smaller set pieces to change the effect of the setting and the location.
And how big is the cast for this show? Because there's the Broadway leads, there are a handful of named high school students, and then there's adult ensemble and a teen ensemble. How many people are going to be on stage at Albany?
If I'm not mistaken, it's about roughly somewhere between 10 to 15 named characters. And I think we have about 10 to 15 as well ensemble members joining them as well. So it's a very powerful cast list we've got.
Well, having that many people in the show is a challenge on just about any community theater stage, because they're not always the biggest. But how do you get that many dancers and singers on the stage, and not to mention the costume changes?
Very tightly spaced between the actors. A lot of them kind of have to get comfortable with their surroundings with each other and such, but it's all working marvelously. As far as costume changes go, as of really this recording, I guess we haven't really done too much with costumes. I know our costumer has kind of fitted and tested, done some tests on certain actors. So there are some actors who I believe have like most of their costume pieces figured out, but we're still kind of in production where we're still figuring out, when they're going to be changing and how they're going to be changing, how fast they're going to be changing, and all that kind of stuff.
Well, Liz, how are dance rehearsals going?
Oh, dance rehearsals are always a great time. Carrie, our choreographer, has just a lot of fun numbers in store. They're just really high energy. And I will say we have a really large cast, and it's a really, really collaborative group of people, which with a cast this large is not necessarily always the case, but everyone is so collaborative and so positive. So dancing in that environment, especially like you mentioned on a smaller stage, it's really nice to be surrounded by such incredible people.
Well, your character, Dee Dee, has a lot of bluster and a lot of ego that she brings to the stage. Talk about what your favorite moment or moments are in this show as Dee Dee.
I mean, I really love playing this character. This is kind of a dream role for me, because she's just she's just larger than life, but she still has a lot of depth to her. So it's been a really fun character. I'd say the number that I have the most fun with is It's Not About Me. And that's like her first really big song as Broadway crew busts into the gym to break up the PTA meeting. That is probably one of my favorite numbers.
Yeah, because it really is all about her, isn't
it? It really is. And then there are some other moments that I think highlight more of the depth of the character, so that she's not just this, vapid service person, but watching her relationship with Principal Hawkins develop throughout the show, I think it really adds to the depth of the character. And so we see that, through their interactions, but also, the ladies improving, which is happening in the second act, and, culminating at the final prom. And so it's just a really fun journey to be on.
And Abby, your character, Emma, goes through some changes as well. She may be shy at the beginning, but she figures out the right way to fight the fear that is in her hometown about people who are different. What is the biggest challenge for you in playing that role?
A role like Emma Nolan is actually it's interesting for me because there are so many parts that I relate to, because just like Emma, I am also unapologetically myself, but I don't really like to announce it all the time.
Mhm.
So I'm confident at the same time as being a little reserved. But the biggest challenge for Emma Nolan is probably trying to find the balance of awkward and confident in who I am, especially in scenes with my girlfriend, because I need to show that I am confident with her more than anyone else. So I really have to change my body structure and movement whenever I'm around her.
I think that's a really well-written relationship. I think Chad Begulin and Bob Martin's book is really spot on in the relationship between Emma and her girlfriend. Don't you think they have a really warm relationship, but also not without the big challenge that comes in the show?
Yeah, definitely. I remember my directors have pulled me and Jessica, who plays Alyssa in our production, but they've always pulled us aside and said that the story revolves around us and this relationship that we have. And one of the things that I think is really noticeable in our production is there are a pair of other teenage couples who are a bit more like flirty and overconfident in a lot of the dance numbers, and they hang on each other a lot and have a lot of cute partner dancing. But meanwhile, Alyssa and Emma are usually a lot more softer and gentler in their movements with each other, and it just really shows how much they just love each other, just unconditional love.
And tell us about the relationship between Emma and the other named high school parts in this show.
So, since the school takes place in Edgewater, Indiana, not a lot of the other students like Emma at all, because they are all very Christian and they think that what she is doing is wrong. And the fun thing about, I think, the teenage characters in general is that they are depicted as real people and not enemies or villains. Because, yeah, they hate Emma at the beginning, but they learned that, hey, maybe hating someone because of who they love isn't the greatest thing to do. It's a really interesting relationship dynamic between Emma and the other high schoolers because they're against her in the beginning, but they kind of learn how to accept her for who she is in the end.
Well, I like the way that the writers of this book approached that because they educated the other high school students in a way that they could understand. It just really made it real. All right. Well, thank you, Dan Bushong, the assistant director and stage manager of the Prom, and Abigail Hobson and Liz Winters for joining us here on KMUZ Theater Talk. The Prom plays at Albany Civic Theater and opens on April 5th and runs through April 27th. And there are matinee performances on Sundays. You can find out more about the show and get tickets for the Prom at albanycivic.org. And thank you so much, Dan, Abby, and Liz for joining us here on KMUZ Theater Talk. Break a leg, you guys.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Yep, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Joining us in our next interview is director Susan Coromel to tell us about Brian Friel's Irish family masterwork, Dancing at LUGHNASA, playing at Willamette University, April 11th through 27th. Stay with us.
We're talking with Susan Coromel, directing Dancing at LUGHNASA at Willamette University, and it opens April 11th. Welcome to Theater Talk again, Susan.
Why, thank you. Yes.
Well, Susan, Dancing at LUGHNASA is, I guess, what many people would consider Brian Friel's masterwork.
Mhm.
It's all about childhood memories of the earlier part of the 20th century, 1936, in Ballybeg, Ireland. Tell us a little bit about what is it that brought you to Brian Friel's work?
Well, I am returning to Brian Friel's work. Actually, I had the opportunity of acting in this play a couple of times in my career and
Oh,
thought it's just a beautiful play. It's beautiful language. It has a lot of elements to it that allows us to, in training actors, it gives them a lot of things to work on in terms of there's choreography in it, there's dialects in it, and plus just the very delicate moment by moment
yeah.
subtextual dialogue of family dynamics that the play offers to young actors. Because Brian Friel, you know, was considered Ireland's Anton Chekhov, and in many ways, this play is shows that off to be quite true.
It's a beautiful play, a beautiful story, and told by a man who is returning through memory to his ancestral home in Ballybeg. And there are a mother, his four sisters, and I believe it's his uncle who is a priest who has returned from doing missionary work.
Right, because he was in poor health. And then we learned through the play that it's more than his health that was at stake for the Catholic Church.
Tell us a little bit about the family dynamic that's behind this story and a little bit about the story itself.
Sure. So the story is begins with the character of Michael as an adult telling us about a memory he has in the summer of 1936, and he introduces the characters, and he clearly lives in a house as a 7-year-old boy. He lived in a house with his 4 aunts and his mother, who was unmarried, and within that dynamic, they create, you know, a hierarchy of relationship, but where Kate is the school teacher and she's the eldest, and then Maggie, who's the joker in the family, and then Agnes and Rose have jobs knitting gloves in the village, and then the mother who mostly does housework and raises her son. And so that's the family dynamic. And into that has entered Uncle Jack, who, as a parish priest in Uganda for 25 years at a leper colony, has returned because they've been told he's in poor health. And that's not untrue. He does come back to the house with malaria, but soon becomes healed from that. And then we see that the paganism has become more of his way of looking at spirituality. And so it has a lot of conversations about Catholicism and paganism and how we are living, you know, that with the world above and the world below and the draw that those two create. But it's also about language, and it's about the loss of language, because Father Jack has been speaking Swahili for the last 25 years, so he's struggling with English again. It's 1936. The industrialization is starting to take hold of Ireland, and soon we're going to find out that these sisters who are making gloves won't be able to sustain that anymore. And so that's the family dynamic, and it's just a memory of 2 weeks in their life that he remembers.
And I think the Catholic, it's a presence in the sisters' lives. They talk about it a lot. Now, don't they dance?
They do. They dance. And that is one of those moments where, you know, there's a beautiful monologue that the character Maggie remembers herself of a time when she went to a dance competition with her friend and the 2 boys they liked, and her friend, who is a beautiful dancer, doesn't win. And it's a daydream gone bad, really, when she describes the end of the the monologue, and there's something unspokenly stirring in her. And then the radio comes on, which is a big part of the play, is that they have the arrival of this radio, this battery operated radio, which was not a, you know, it was a modern object, and it was something that Kate, probably the eldest sister, spent a lot of money to get for the household, but it goes in and out. It's never there when you need it, they say, right? And so at this moment it comes on, and with a strong Irish dance beat, and And then the sisters start to dance, and they soon sort of dance a little bit out of control, and in the sense that the whatever is layered inside them that is yearning to be free is let loose in this moment. And then, of course, the radio does what it always does and shuts off.
Yes.
And they're stuck not having the music anymore. And then that creates a discord within this relationships for a little bit. But as they live, and I mean, it's set in the kitchen of a stone house.
Yeah.
You know, that's their common room.
Yes.
And so they're on top of each other all the time.
And for the set, you only have the room.
So Brian Friel is very specific. I joke that it's a manual for putting on Dancing at LUGHNASA, because he is so specific about what the set looks like in terms of, you have to have the playing area that's the kitchen, and you have to have the playing area that's the backyard.
Oh, okay.
Because scenes are happening simultaneously, and they're flowing back and forth between what's happening in the house and what's happening in the yard. So that's a given. Then you just figure out how your space can make that happen, right? Oh,
So are you approaching the design of the set and costumes and that sort of thing as specifically period, or as representative, or?
Yes, very, very much so. Period. And Bobby Brewer-Wallen is the costume designer, and he's done a beautiful job on finding the personalities of the sisters and defining them in ways that help with the dynamics. We had 2 choreographers in this piece, one for the ballroom dancing and one for the Irish dancing. And we have a brand new lighting designer that's joined our team, Chester Bell. This is his first show with Willamette, and then he's going to stay on with us for the full year as our lighting and sound professor. And the set is a stone house. Rob Vaughn is a scenic designer. And we have been fortunate to rehearse in it for the last week and a half. So that also is really awesome, because our rehearsal space doesn't accommodate both the house and the yard. So there were aspects of the play I couldn't stage until we got in the space.
Well, and it's always different. Even if you blocked it out, it's always different in the rehearsal space.
It is. And with young actors, it's really important too, because they're aware of the vocal energy they need to fill the space.
And are you doing this in the larger Pelton Theater, or?
We are. Yeah, we're doing the larger space. And that's a hard space for young actors to play. It's deceiving, but it's basically a big square. And luckily, though, they have the walls of the house to ricochet the voices off of. But
are you doing it in the round or proscenium?
Neither. It's 3/4.
3/4.
Yeah. So audience on 2 sides and center thrust. Yeah. And they've had to learn some 30s contemporary couples dancing, and they've learned their Irish dance. The majority of them obviously are speaking with an Irish dialect, and then the one character who is from Wales is working with the Welsh dialect. And so
that's hard.
That's also, that's really hard. It's hard for him lined up against all this Irish too, because there are similarities in the Welsh
but differences.
It's
like we can't read either of Gaelic or Welsh, but
right.
Oh,
yeah, it all looks like Sanskrit to me.
Yeah, really.
Yes.
So Susan, give us an idea of the themes or messages that you hope that audiences will take away from this production.
To me, the play is about memory, and I think it offers a kind of an interesting conversation about what we choose to remember and how we remember, and how memory weaves and shifts, and how looking back on something that happened as a child, how we grapple with what it might mean. But it's also about family life. It's about myth making, which I think Brian Friel talks about in a lot of his plays.
Yeah.
it's also a play where many of the characters are sort of, as Brian Friel called it, groping. He called it groping towards love.
Yeah.
And another, for me, another element that is incredibly moving, I think, is that point where he says, he says at the beginning of the play, he tells us, I'm going to tell you this story. When I think back on the summer of 1936, different kinds of memories offer themselves to me. And he talks about the wireless, and he talks about the return of Uncle Jack from Uganda. And then he talks about his father. And for the first time in his life, he had a chance to observe him. So I think in that sense, too, it's about this momentous, simple but momentous moment in the boy's life. It's also about Kate and the words that she says, where she says that suddenly you realize hair cracks are appearing everywhere and the control is slipping, and the whole thing is so fragile that it can't be held together much longer. It's all about to collapse, she says, and her sister says, nothing's about to collapse. But really what is about to collapse is the world as they knew it, right?
Yes.
That moment is frozen in a way, and animation.
It all changed after that summer.
Yeah. The family changed, which I won't go into because it's a spoiler, but the world changed, right? It was 1936. There was the Spanish Civil War starting, and when the Spanish Civil War starts, we're right into World War II. So, I mean, there's and the industrialization and the independence of Ireland. I mean, that had happened, but was part
They
of.
were still working it out.
This is a look back at an Ireland that doesn't exist anymore and will never exist anymore, and lives in only one person's mind. I mean, maybe it's a cliche, but the Irish are supposed to be some of the world's greatest storytellers. We've heard that for a long time, but like you mentioned, the recollection of stories is fluid.
Right.
This is a man in approaching middle age that is telling a story about something that happened when he was 7 years old. So there's all of that, and that flavors this as well. But it's beautifully done. This really is a masterwork of a great author. What for you is the most beautiful thing about this play? Is it a moment? Is it the overall story itself? What is it that really grabs you about this play?
I think it sort of transcends in a way for me, in a way that poetry does. The way he writes, particularly Michael's monologues. I mean, he's referred to as the Irish Anton Chekhov, but I would also say he might be the Irish Tennessee Williams in many ways too, because of the poetry and imagery that he allows us. And I always think about this play and a line actually out of Tennessee Williams' play, which is so similar, the Glass Menagerie, which is sort of Tennessee Williams' version of Brian Friel, or the opposite, really. Dancing in LUGHNASA is Brian Friel's version of Tennessee Williams, but it's their lives are what they're choosing to create a dramatic text out of, right? And in Tennessee Williams, he calls it the long delayed but always expected something that you live for, which in that play is The Gentleman Caller. In this play, it is there. Those sisters do have a hope that there is something more than this kitchen and knitting these gloves, but at the same time, they're feeling the pressures of something about to change. And I think the idea of putting this radio in their home, they don't have electricity, right? It's a battery operated radio, but you're hearing pop music. You hear Celtic music too, but you hear pop music just break in.
And it's the world breaking in, really.
It's the world breaking in. Yeah. It's just, there's so many, it's a brilliant play. It should create a lot of dialogue for sure amongst those who see it or have seen it and are going to come back and see it here. But I guess I can find no one thing that I really like about it. There's many things that it's just really dynamic. And plus it's a great play to put in the hands of young actors, because
to teach actors how to act. Yeah.
Yeah, just the subtext alone, and how what you're saying and what you're doing, and why your moment right now is something that happened, 2 pages ago, that is finally manifesting itself in you as you do this action, right? And they're starting to see, oh my God, subtext is everything, isn't it? Like, it kind of is. Yeah. That's how humans work.
Well, Brian Friel's masterpiece, Dancing at LUGHNASA, will be at Willamette University Theater April 11th through 27th. It's directed by today's guest, Susan Coromel. It's a story about longing, memory, family, and the anticipation of change. It's set in 1936 in Ballybeg, Ireland, at a time of festival called LUGHNASA, which celebrates the pagan god of harvest. Thank you so much, Susan Coromel, for joining us here to tell us all about it on KMUZ Theater Talk.
Yes, thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me.
It's time to wind up today's KMUZ Theater Talk program. Thank you for joining us. Next week at 9 a.m., you can tune in to Talking About Art with Joel Zach. And KMUZ Theater Talk is a proud member of the Mid-Valley Theater Network.
KMUZ Theater Talk comes your way at 9 a.m. the first and third Friday of the month on your radio or smart speaker at 100.7 and 88.5 FM, on your favorite radio app, or streaming live at kmuz.org. You can also listen to our KMUZ Theater Talk programs anytime, wherever you get your podcasts.
Ed and I will return April 19th with a brand new KMUZ Theater Talk program. Meanwhile, check out our KMUZ Theater Talk Facebook page for news and updates about live theater in the Mid-Willamette Valley.
If you haven't yet joined in to support Theater Talk and the rest of KMUZ's great community radio programs, go to kmuz.org right now and click on the Pledge to Your Favorite Show box and choose Theater Talk. And thanks. Until next time,
We'll see you in the front row.